Hello and welcome to Brady's Corner. I'm Brady. This is my corner. We've got a fabulous guest today, Mike Merrill. Mike, welcome to Brady's Corner. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your company.
Thank you, Brady. Appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation. Looking forward to talking. So my name is Mike Merrill, and I am a co-founder as well as the chief evangelist of WorkMax and About Time Technologies. And we are based out of Utah, just south of Salt Lake City. We've been in business for just about 20 years now, so 2 decades, and it's been an exciting.
Seemed like yesterday.
Yeah. Some days, sometimes it seems like it was 100 years ago too. So depends on what you're talking about. But yeah, we are a company that specializes in mobile data collection, delivering live field data from the field to an office to the cloud. And we specialize in integrations and mobile technology and things like safety and compliance and time and labor tracking and overtime and all the other things that surround that. And so, yeah, I've been at this a long time, but before this venture, I was a general contractor and we self-performed, concrete framing, labor, all kinds of the different trades. And so I'm kind of eating my own dog food here with our software solution. And so myself and 3 of the partners started this 20 years ago, and it's been an exciting ride. We just love working with all the different trades throughout the country and even internationally. And been exciting to watch your journey as well, Brady. We see you at a lot of events, and we have a chance to collaborate here and there. So it's exciting to be on here to join you today.
Yeah. And just for the audience's benefit, Mike and I, that's how we met. We came across each other at several conferences over the last several years, most recently in Fort Worth and then in Scottsdale as well. So Mike, you serve quite a bit of clientele in the construction space and also in the architecture and engineering space as well, right?
Yep, that is true. Most certainly. That's our wheelhouse.
And so tell me, really in general for businesses, especially as times tighten up and, we may see a little bit of, we're seeing it now, some challenges in the market. Why is it important for people to tighten up their time tracking or maybe start their time tracking where they haven't before?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and we've seen this well since we started, that's why we came up with the product. There's just such a gap in not only time and labor and wages, et cetera, but tracking production and finding out, what are we getting for this expense? It's the largest variable expense in not only construction, but also mining, oil and gas, energy, solar. So we serve a lot of other industries, and we market heavily in all of those as well as construction. And everybody seems to have the same problem. There's a disconnect between what's happening boots on the ground out on projects, and then also, when an office administration team, project managers, superintendents, ownership, all of those, especially capital projects and other things where there's reporting requirements. And so data gets blurred and pencil whipped and, averaged and just kind of thrown into a field in Excel or a spreadsheet or some other method of tracking. And it just seems like that data is very inaccurate. And although we have all these technology tools today that we didn't have 20 years ago when we started, it almost seems like we've maybe overcorrected, collecting too much data, but not necessarily leveraging it or viewing it in a meaningful way in real time. And that's really the focus of everything that we do, is we want that data in real time in front of all the stakeholders.
Yeah, and I was actually just looking it up. There's a quote. I thought it was Charles Schwab, but evidently Drucker is credited with it. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And I thought maybe that was flipped on its head with Charles Schwab. If you can measure it, you can improve it. But I'd have to dig a little more into that. But so tell me that, like, what do you see mostly that you would like to improve upon at, for example, construction companies? Maybe they're measuring, some of the folks in the field's time. But what about folks in the office? Is that also important to measure? And if so, why and how?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, and it's not just compliance and wage and labor laws and overtime rules and all these union different, certified class, certified projects, certified payroll. All of these areas have reporting requirements, and so whether it's an architect that's working on blueprints and they need to cost their time to a certain project or certain phases of a project, or it's somebody out in the field that's laying conduit, and doing earthwork and excavation and compaction and all those things. These tools that we've developed and that our customers really have come to depend on heavily for their day-to-day operations are a way that companies can just have that instant visibility. And so again, whether it's office staff, they're even salaried. I mean, it's not just putting their thumb on the wages and controlling overtime, but it's more like finding out where your money's really going. It's like a personal budget at home. If you really want to, if you're into the Dave Ramsey stuff or some other mentor that is advising on finance, they're going to tell you you've got to have a budget and you've got to be strict. You've got to record all those expenses. Well, companies, and I was guilty of this same thing, and everybody I knew had the same challenge. They're just lumping labor into some big number and not necessarily doing a lot to manage that mid-process. And so, like your quote, and it's funny, I just did a regional CFMA presentation and I shared that exact quote in my slide deck. What gets measured gets improved, essentially.
So who did you attribute that to, Drucker or Schwab?
It was Drucker actually on my slide. So I know I've heard Charles Schwab say it might be. I know people say you can't manage what you don't measure, or various.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. So, but in any case, you're every hour that ticks by, every minute, I mean, you're spending money. And so if you're in concrete and you're buying a yard of concrete mix, or you're a framing contractor and you're buying a sheet of plywood, those are fixed costs. And although with the supply chain shortages and different challenges and fluctuations of those costs, you get price sheets, you get lists, you might have updates every month. You know what those are going to cost you, and so you can estimate very accurately. But with labor, it's a variable. Like you really don't know. I mean, you can guess and estimate, and your best way to estimate accurately is to look at the past, the history, what you've done previously. What did this crew do? What did this individual perform at as far as a production level? How many units per hour did he put in place? Well, if you're dumping garbage in the front end of the spreadsheet by just estimating and pencil whipping and just lumping in this big number on a Friday afternoon at 3:30 before I have to turn my weekly time card in, then the data is only as good as the way that you collected it. And so if we could put a thumbtack on that thing and just keep it tight all the way through in real time as you go throughout the week, you'll have live visibility, like a dashboard on your vehicle, looking at your fuel gauge or your RPMs, right? And when there's red light warnings and things that you need to do to take corrective action, you need to know that now, not later. And the average time period that I hear all the time is 3 to 4 weeks from the time that something actually happened till it hits the 7 or 8 or 9 or more different processes in a business to actually get that data to the final point that it needs to arrive at in order to make a decision. And so, if you're looking at your fuel gauge, well, 3 weeks is too long if you run out on day 2. So you've really got to have visibility into that data as soon as you possibly can if you want to be accurate, and also if you want to make better decisions to take corrective action when there's a problem. So what we do is we give that visibility to people in real time, all the time. All that key data that's important to each individual based on their role or the project is shared with those that need to see it. So they know now where they're at, as opposed to if you're in a basketball game and they hide the scoreboard and they hide the clock until the last 2 minutes of the game. I mean, you may feel like you're winning, but you're losing big time. You're getting just spanked. And so this is one way that companies can have that scoreboard live and watch that as they're going through this project.
Mike, can you give me an example of 2 things? An example of that, red zone product, example, the red zone issue you talked about, as well as how do you measure real time throughout the week?
Yeah, so the first thing is, for example, we connect to estimating systems as well as ERP and accounting. So we pull the estimate in from a system. It can be managed directly in ours, but if you're using an estimating system, we can pull that data in directly. So when we're collecting labor, we're pushing that in to a field that is measured against the estimate as you go. So because we're tracking that in real time, when you get, let's say you think this particular phase of project is going to take 30 days, and you've got to do 100 units an hour by the end of the 30 days in order to complete it on time. Well, you get to day 20 or 25, and you find out you're only 63.9% completed on production for the hours that you've spent in a 30-day period. And so what can happen is you can figure out, okay, wow, we've got to pick up the pace. We got to figure out what's slowing us up. Is it weather related? Do we have not enough guys there? Are we short people? Do we have too many people? And now we're actually slowing down production. So you can move those levers as you're going through the project. And so you see it's going to get red here soon before it gets red. And if it gets red, then you may need to investigate and say, oh man, we had some change orders that weren't documented. The budget wasn't updated. And that's something we hear all the time. Companies aren't necessarily billing for change orders that occurred, or they're doing extra work that nobody got a signature on. And so our product can, do the change orders and get the signatures and do all those things also to help keep the compliance side of the agreement in place. But that's an example of knowing that you're going to go red line before you even get close to getting there, and taking corrective action so that you actually know.
And I would think in certain periods of the year, it's especially important before, if you're working for the government, before their fiscal year end closes. I mean, we're in Q4 right now, right? So the final quarter of this calendar year. Otherwise, it's tough to get some change orders after the fact, right? So.
Very much so, yeah, and that's the other thing. You talk about, what gets measured gets approved. Well, when you have a tool that can in real time get those signatures, when as soon as something's identified, you could take the pictures and get the signatures and get the approval. Well, now you're very likely to get paid, and paid in a timely manner, and not have a dispute or a lawsuit or arguments. Right. And that's the thing that we hear as companies say, man, I just get a check now instead of an argument, because I've got these tools in place.
Much nicer.
Yeah.
Well, you just had your 100th episode of the Mobile Workforce Podcast. Let's talk about that. Number one, who was on the episode, and also, what types of things do you cover in your Mobile Workforce podcast, and how can we listen to that? I guess
thank you.
Mobile Workforce, or.
Yeah, it's called the Mobile Workforce Podcast, and we're on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all the different Amazon, Google Podcasts. So everywhere podcasts are found, and you can search that up and just hit the subscribe button. Brady, you've been a guest on it as well. That was a lot of fun to chat with you at your conference.
But I wasn't the 100th episode.
No, you weren't. No, you were not. You would have been a great one though. So actually what we did is we hired a new CRO recently. He's from the estimating side of construction and mining and energy, and has a lot of safety, a lot of experience. His name's Ron Babich. And I think Ron. He actually came to your conference for just a minute and visited down there in Scottsdale. But had Ron interview me instead of me interview a guest, and talk about those same things, what we've talked about and learned. We cover a lot of things that are related to not only the kind of stuff that we do, but also what's impacting the industry. What is the economy looking like? We've had Anirban Basu, who's an economist that speaks at a lot of events nationally. We got other guests, like a Christian Berger, that's a consulting firm for software selection. We've had people with NAWIC, National Association for Women in Construction, and talk about the impact that women are having on the construction industry. We've had Stuart Binstock, the current outgoing, he's getting ready to retire, CEO of the of the CFMA, which is Construction Financial Management Association. And Stuart actually, instead of talking about finance, we had him come on and talk about suicide awareness and the importance of safety in construction and things that really impact companies. Maybe, it all hits the bottom line, but it's not the first thing that comes top of mind. We're thinking dollars, and we're thinking of production and things that we solve, but there's other areas of the HR side that impact what a company is able to do as far as performance, and also culture. We've had customers on K-Post Roofing. They did the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, and really a big national roofer down in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and they talked about what they do in their company culture to recruit and help retain employee talent, and then also just other companies that are doing things like setting up trainings for high school students to get into the trades, because that's another problem.
That's very important. That's very important, yeah. And no more than now and today. Mike, as chief evangelist for your company, what's the number one thing when you go to these conferences that you want people to know about? Whether they use your product or not. Like, what do you tell architecture firms, engineering firms, construction firms?
I think the biggest thing is, and this has always been true, and it's good. It's similar with lots of software solutions, but the things that we help companies really ratchet down on and get a finger on is those dollars that are. I always call it this. It's like the sacred money. It's the extra money. You can take it from one pocket and put it back into your other pocket instead of doling it out to these wasted processes and these things that are inefficient. And so I think the biggest thing is that there's a lot more money, a lot more profit and production hidden in these little details around that labor, boots on the ground, real time, that you can pick up right now. You don't have to wait. When you save on payroll or you reduce overtime, you're not only reducing the wages and the cost and expense of payroll, but also your liability and your work comp insurance is based on gross payroll. And so you're reducing your rates on those things. And so there's a lot of untapped dollars that companies are not enjoying, that they're doing all the work to get, but they're just not realizing those. So I want companies to investigate further and just say, let's look at this loss calculator and plug in a few numbers and just see. Even if you could pick up 5 or 10 minutes a day of production in your field personnel, what would that look like? And 100 employee company can easily save $500,000 to $1 million by putting a tool like this in place of direct dollars that they are already earning and they never see. And so what can you do with that capital? If you're running on a 10% profit margin and you save 500 grand on something that you're already doing, well, that's like doing $5 more million of production.
Yeah. And
so opportunity cost, and it's just it's amazing when we talk to companies. I've got another trip planned next week. We're going to NECA down in Austin, Texas, and I've got 4 or 5 customers lined up that we're going to visit and talk to them about what they're saving and what they're realizing with these things. And I know we've done case studies with some of them already and just want to dig in a little further. Many of them are saving $500,000 to $1 million+ a year that last year or 2 years ago, before they put something in place, they weren't getting. So It's exciting. It's exciting.
Well, that's great, Mike. Well, thank you, Mike. That's just about all the time we have today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us at Brady's Corner. Hey, Mike, can you recap again how folks can get in touch with you or also follow your podcast and listen?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So it's just the website address is just workmax.com, WORKMAX.com, just like it sounds. And you can email me if you have questions or any interest in anything we've talked about today, just directly at mike@abouttimetech.com. And then our podcast is called The Mobile Workforce Podcast. And again, it's found everywhere that podcasts are discovered. And we actually received a few awards for it recently. Found out we're in the top 5% of all podcasts in the world when it comes to all the scores and the metrics of consistency and listening. listenership. So
That's fantastic. Congratulations, Mike. And now where's the next event? I'm not going to be at NECA next week in Austin. Are you going to be doing the AGC CFMC?
yeah, so yeah, we've got in fact, we're at next month we've got 3 events at one time. So we're splitting resources and putting people at different places. Some of them we're just registering as attendees to don't participate. We're not available so people. Yeah, we've got like I said, NECA next week. I actually have a couple of guys that flew out to Chicago today for an ISSA conference. It's janitorial work. We haven't done that one before, but we have some companies in that business and industry. So they said, "Golly, you're missing out. You should come to this." So we're going to give that one a whirl, and lots of other things coming up here in the fall that we're excited to have.
So I'll see you in Vegas at the AGC CFMC one then.
Yeah, AGC CFMA. I think is it next
November
month?
2nd.
Are we already? Yeah.
Well, very good, very good. Well, we'll see you there, and if anybody's listening wants to meet us there, please do reach out.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Have a great one.
Thanks, Jim.
And make sure to give Brady's Corner a like and a follow and a share. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.